Hi everyone, this is Officer Padani. Welcome to today's media availability for October 25th, 2022. Thank you for joining us. This is just a friendly reminder to raise your hand if you have a question. Chief, you may begin.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to give you a couple brief remarks regarding our crime picture, as well as some information regarding hate crimes, particularly some anti-Semitic hate crimes that we've seen over this last weekend, and a little extending back over a number of months with some drop flyers. And then officer-involved shootings, an update with regards to the number we've had and the makeup of those year to date. First, some good news in regards to our violent crime. We've seen a continued reduction in the rate of instances of homicides as well as shooting violence in the city. This last week, we had 1 homicide for the entire week. This same time last year, we had 8. This last week, we had 13 shooting victims, and the same period last year, that number was 32. So marked reductions, overall contributing to the department ending this past Saturday with a 2% reduction in homicides. That's 7 fewer homicides overall. Our violent crime stands at 3.5% of an increase. About a month ago, that number was a full percentage point higher. Similarly, in our property crime, while we have a 10.5% increase in overall property crime, a month ago, that number was 11.6% increase. So the rate of increase is slowing. We still have far too many guns, too much gun violence, and we still have instances of motor vehicle thefts that over a 3-year period are up 70%. So we're going to ask the public to continue to work with us on improving methods for crime prevention, for safety of their residences, their property, certainly the safety as they go about moving about the city. I'm proud of the work of our men and women that have gone out and have made a number of arrests, both for gun offenses, robberies, homicides, as well as the lesser crimes of these property-related offenses. And our work in that area will also continue. I remarked on this morning's police commission, troubling instances or a series of hate crimes that have existed on the west side. And we saw on Saturday where a protest with a banner drop on the 405 and La Tierra involved some extremist and anti-Semitic biases with these banners. The CHP actually responded to that scene. We backed them based on some radio calls that people were throwing items onto the freeway. And yet the CHP, as they made contact with the individuals, were able to de-escalate the situation. They found that there was no crime at the time, certainly hateful speech and disturbing remarks and banners. That group did leave the area. Yesterday, there was an additional protest. However, in this instance, it was a counter protest at the same location with about 5 protesters, series of signs. Again, there was no crime that was committed, but we see that that's a location that has now drawn this attention twice. This is on the backdrop of a series of flyer drops, and flyer drops, to explain, it is a development of a flyer, a posting, a bulletin, if you will. And in that, it contains most recently these anti-Semitic remarks. It is a hate incident in and of itself because it's hate speech, it's biased, it's discriminatory, and it's based on just ignorance in my view. But the distribution of them is typically not a crime. Over the last 8 months in the Brentwood and Century City areas of West Los Angeles, we've seen these drops occur typically at night, in the late night, early morning hours. Now, this past Saturday night, we learned of an incident involving an individual that was in a black SUV that escalated the situation to not only distributing these flyers, but on a Jewish home location that was identified as having Jewish residents. The individual stood outside and did a Heil Hitler salute while distributing these items of hate. We do believe that his actions, the individual's actions, constitutes a crime, and that he's broached the line. We are working with the neighborhood, and there's fortunate that a nearby neighbor's camera system on their neighborhood watch, so to speak, was able to provide us some image. Our Major Crimes Division personnel are investigating that to identify both the vehicle, and we hope to identify the individual that was involved. We are working with the U.S. Attorney as well as our district attorney and city attorney, and will aggressively file charges. Year to date, hate crimes in Los Angeles has continued to rise. This is a trend that we've been reporting on earlier. Year to date, they're up nearly 12%, with 562 hate crimes this year to date. versus 503 last year. When we look back over a 2-year period, that number is even higher of an increase, with a 71% increase since 2020. That's 234 additional hate crimes. In regards to anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish bias, this year we've seen an increase over last year. That increase is 6 additional hate crimes, 76 this year to date versus 70 last year. And when we look over a 2-year period, the increase is even greater, a 77% increase, with 76 anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic bias hate crimes. And last year, or in 2020, that number was only 43. 43 is still too many, but you can see a marked increase. Our efforts will continue to work to stand alongside and stand guard with all communities across Los Angeles. These types of hate instances and hate crimes are not to be tolerated, and our department's posture is to both efforts to ensuring community resilience, community awareness for their safety, our presence in those communities, and also to pursue every enforcement lever possible to identify those persons responsible and ensure the full and complete prosecution of those individuals for all federal, state, and local laws possible. Lastly, as I do each week, I report on the number of officer-involved shootings that the department's been engaged in over the course of time. Year to date, that number stands at 30 officer-involved shootings within the Los Angeles Police Department. Last year, that number was 31. Today's report also included information about the nature or the makeup of those shootings. In the 31 officer-involved shootings that occurred last year, 12 of them were fatal. In the 30 officer-involved shootings this year, that number is 14. When we look at what makes up those 30 officer-involved shootings, we see some marked patterns so far. We've seen a substantial decrease in the number of officer-involved shootings involving edged weapons. Last year at this time, of the 31 officer-involved shootings, 10 involved an edged weapon. This year, year to date, that number is 5. Additionally, we've seen a decrease in the number of officer-involved shootings involving persons exhibiting a mental illness. That last year, that number was 12. This year, that number is 6. Troubling areas, though, are a number of officer-involved shootings in which the suspect is armed with a firearm as compared to an edged weapon or some other type of weapon. There's been a 63% increase in that. 63% of all officer-involved shootings now involve a firearm being held or possessed by the suspect. That's an increase from 14 last year to 19 this year. So again, 63% of all officer-involved shootings of the 30 involved a person with a firearm. The other matter is that the number of officers firing at officers has increased. The number of suspects firing at officers has increased. Last year, that number was 4. This year, that number has increased to 7. And in fact, the last 3 officer-involved shootings all involved individuals that were firing at the officers during the course of that encounter. These are troubling statistics. They also closely mirror what we're seeing on a national level in regards to violence against officers. And we are continuing to keep our officers trained and aware of the dangers and the challenges that are out there before them, while also encouraging them to recognize that the vast majority of the communities that we serve and protect need officers and are not those does not pose a risk to their safety, but instead are depending on them to provide for theirs. So with that, that concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you, sir. Our first question will come from Stephanie of the Associated Press.
Thanks, Chief. I appreciate you taking the time as always. Can you give us an update on the investigation into Leslie Jordan's MVA? And I know you've mentioned this before, that previously that no one had come forward with a report regarding the recording at the LA Fed. Has that changed since the last time you were asked about it?
Okay, so let me, I think, Stephanie, I paused for a moment to understand the first question, but I think the second question was on the Federation regarding an investigation?
Correct.
Okay, so the department has initiated a criminal investigation into an allegation of eavesdropping relative to the LA Fed meeting involving then councilperson Nury Martinez, council member Gil Cedillos, and council member Kevin De Leon, and the Fed president, Mr. Herrera. Our Major Crimes Division is conducting that. and we will bring our results to the appropriate prosecuting agency upon completion of that investigation. What was the first question?
Oh, never mind. Can you go more into that one? When did someone bring forward a report? Unless I'm missing something, you haven't disclosed this before. We're looking for, more details about this criminal investigation.
So at the request of the individuals that were present in that meeting, they approached the department on Friday, this past Friday, and requested that we conduct an investigation into the illegal recording of their private conversation. The department immediately dispatched detectives to conduct recorded interviews of the individuals, and our investigation will continue as to the facts and circumstances of how the meeting occurred, and information from the victims of why they believe that the recording was unlawful, and also understanding from them the assertion that it was not with their permission. We'll also look as far as possible to understand how such a recording was made, and to identify, if possible, the person or persons responsible.
Do you have a suspect in mind?
No, at this point, the investigation is wide open, and we will, obviously this is a sensitive matter, and one that we will pursue, and the investigation will take us where it takes us. But I have communicated with the California Attorney General. He is aware of this investigation, given that they are conducting a parallel of sort investigations into the meeting itself. We wanted to ensure that our investigation did not conflict with any of their activities. And I've also spoken with City Attorney Mike Feuer relative to his office's review of these circumstances. And depending on the results of the investigation, the District Attorney's office will also be consulted, but that's not yet occurred.
Who exactly made the report to the LAPD? Was it those three council people? Who exactly made it and how? And then I'll turn it over to somebody else. Sure. Sorry.
Well, I won't go into the time frame other than to say that communication by the individuals that were within the meeting came to the department and asked for an investigation, and the assertion that a crime had been committed, that they had been unlawfully and surreptitiously recorded. And they asked, and we're conducting that investigation. This was done by the principals. This wasn't done through some intermediary or otherwise.
So Neri Martinez, Gil Cedillo, the president of the LA Fed, and Kevin De Leon came to the LAPD and asked for an investigation into it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anybody have any further questions? It appears there are no further questions. Chief, do you have any final thoughts?
Nope, I appreciate everyone's attention to this, and we'll look forward to a safe week. Thank you all.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a good evening.